will you be communicating with other women?
I just don't want to say the wrong word.
This weekend was a test for Gino, and I am really sad to say that he failed. He failed miserably.
Gino walked into the room thinking he could charm his way out of anything. But the second Natalie looked at him, you could see the doubt etched across her face. She knew. She knew he'd been talking to other women behind her back, and for the first time, the tension between them wasn't something they could laugh off or brush aside. This weekend wasn't just another meetup. It was a test. A moment that could make or break the fragile second chance he'd been given. And from the way Natalie was standing there, arms crossed, jaw tight, it was clear Gino had already failed in ways he didn't even realize. Every word he tried to say fell flat. "I didn't mean to make you feel that way," he stammered, but it was the same line he'd used last time. The same excuse that had almost cost him her trust before. Natalie wasn't in the mood for explanations. She wanted honesty, raw and immediate. She wanted him to admit it without hesitation, without dancing around, without pretending the elephant in the room didn't exist. Her eyes narrowed, scanning his every move, and you could feel the weight of all the past mistakes piling into the present. Gino's attempts at casual charm, his jokes, even the awkward let's forget about it smiles weren't landing. Every instinct he had to avoid conflict only made Natalie angrier, more frustrated. She wasn't just angry, she was disappointed, hurt, and tired of repeating the same cycle of deception. The clock was ticking. This was his chance to prove he had grown, or to show that patterns didn't change, that history was doomed to repeat itself. Finally, Natalie's patience snapped. She stepped back, shook her head, and asked the question that hung in the air like a storm cloud. The words came out sharp, cutting, and impossible to ignore. "Are you talking to other women while we're here?" Gino froze. And in that moment, it was obvious. This weekend might end with him walking away wondering what went wrong, and Natalie walking off knowing exactly why Gino thought this weekend would be easy, that a few laughs and fake smiles could erase months of mistakes, but Natalie wasn't having it. She remembered last time the half-truths, the late-night excuses, the way he always sidestepped the real questions, and every memory was now a shadow over today. You could see it in the way she tapped her fingers against the table, her eyes sharp, scanning his face for even the slightest flicker of honesty. Gino, on the other hand, seemed completely oblivious, leaning back, shrugging, thinking charm could cover up the truth he had been hiding from her, and maybe from himself. He tried to talk about getting closer, about building something real, but Natalie's silence was louder than any words he could muster. She wasn't fooled by vague promises anymore. Every casual smile, every nervous laugh of his only made her pulse faster with frustration. She wanted clarity, a straight answer, something solid she could hold on to, not empty phrases that reminded her of the same mistakes he made last time. Watching him, you could feel the tension building like a wire stretched too tight. Gino's body language screamed discomfort, fidgeting, avoiding eye contact, but he still didn't seem to grasp why Natalie was so tense. She was standing on principle, wanting him to show he had learned something, that he could break the cycle of deception. But he was caught in his own head, thinking if he avoided the topic, if he joked or laughed, somehow the weekend would survive unscathed. Every step they took together, every word exchanged felt like a countdown. Natalie leaned forward, voice steady but sharp, asking questions that tested him. Gino stumbled, paused, sometimes tried to deflect, never answering directly. The weight of his previous failures hung over him, heavier than any moment he'd faced before, and for the first time it was clear that charm and excuses weren't going to cut it. And then, just as the room seemed frozen, Natalie stopped, looked him straight in the eyes, and asked the one question that could decide everything. Gino hesitated, his jaw tight, hands twitching. The weekend, their second chance, and maybe their future all hinged on what he would do next. Would he finally confess the truth, or would his pattern of mistakes cost him everything again? Natalie had always been careful about who she trusted, but her friend Mel had her back, and Mel wasn't afraid to speak her mind. Last night, Mel dropped a truth bomb Natalie already suspected. Gino had been talking to other women. Suddenly, the weekend wasn't just about fun or dates, it was about uncovering whether honesty could even exist between them. Every secret Mel revealed added weight, a reminder that Gino's past choices weren't staying buried. Gino, meanwhile, acted like nothing was wrong, leaning back, cracking the occasional joke, pretending calm. He thought keeping the mood light would distract Natalie from the tension, but she wasn't blind. Her eyes followed him, sharp and calculating, trying to see through the mask. Every pause, every evasive glance, every stutter in his voice made her suspicion grow. She wanted answers, not charm. Psychologically, deception always escalates conflict, and Gino was proving it in real time. The more he avoided, the more defensive he became, the more Natalie's frustration intensified. It's like spinning a web, one lie pulls in more lies until the whole thing collapses under its own weight. She wasn't angry because he spoke to other women. She was angry because he still hadn't shown he could be honest, still hadn't learned from the past, and now those small cracks were turning into a canyon between them. Finally, Natalie leaned forward, her voice calm but unrelenting. She asked the one question that demanded clarity, the one that had been hanging over them since day one. Gino froze. The room went silent, tension thick enough to choke on. His usual tactics, deflection, humor, half-answers had no effect. He opened his mouth, closed it, searching for a line that wouldn't land him in hot water. And then it hit. He couldn't answer. Not directly, not clearly, not in a way Natalie could trust. Would his inability to speak the truth finally break the fragile trust they had left? Or was there still a chance to salvage this second chance? The escape room should have been a fun distraction, a chance for Gino and Natalie to laugh, work together, and forget the weekend's tension. On the surface, it looked perfect. They were solving puzzles, racing against the clock, cheering when they unlocked a door, even teasing each other over silly mistakes. Gino grinned like he was winning at life, convinced that a little fun could erase all the suspicion and doubt hanging over them. But Natalie's mind was elsewhere. Every riddle solved reminded her of how Gino never solved the real problems between them. She could smile, joke, even celebrate a small victory, but underneath, the same questions bubbled up. Can I trust him? Will he ever be honest? Is this weekend just another performance for the cameras? The escape room became a mirror, showing that while they could cooperate superficially, real teamwork in a relationship required honesty and accountability. Gino, oblivious as always, thought the fun meant they were back on track. He laughed, nudged Natalie, made a few jokes, thinking her smiles were forgiveness. Behavioral patterns are funny that way. He repeated old mistakes, ignoring her emotional signals while reading his own optimism as proof of progress. Natalie, sharp and frustrated, saw right through it. She knew that shared experiences, no matter how exciting or entertaining, couldn't fix the cracks he refused to address. By the time they escaped the room, victorious and laughing, the tension wasn't gone, it was just temporarily hidden behind forced smiles and high fives. Natalie kept her distance, internally bracing herself for the conversation she knew had to happen. Gino's oblivious grin barely hinted at the storm waiting outside the escape room walls. No matter how perfect the date seemed, the unresolved issues were still waiting. And as they stepped out, the real test began. Could Gino finally face the truth before it was too late, or would the weekend end with the same heartbreak repeating itself? The moment of truth arrives. Natalie stops walking, turns to Gino, and stares. The air is thick with anticipation, every second stretching longer than it should. Are you talking to other women? She asks, sharp, deliberate. Not a hint of hesitation, no sugarcoating, just the question hanging between them like a guillotine. Gino freezes. He fumbles with his words, pauses, then blurts a vague, I don't want to say the wrong thing. Classic deflection. Every pause, every half answer is a step further into tension. From a psychological standpoint, humans avoid direct honesty when fear outweighs accountability. Gino isn't lying about feelings, he's lying to protect himself from immediate conflict. But the irony is brutal. In trying to dodge confrontation, he's accelerating the exact outcome he fears. Natalie's frustration is immediate. Her eyes narrow, her jaw tightens. The audience knows what she wants: clarity, honesty, a simple yes or no. Yet Gino dances around the question, each word a reminder of past mistakes. He seems oblivious to how evasive language triggers doubt and anger. He smiles nervously, tries to charm, and even adds a shaky, "It's complicated." Complicated isn't the word Natalie wants to hear. She wants truth. For viewers, this moment is electric. Will he finally drop the act, admit everything, and maybe salvage the weekend? Or will his evasiveness push her over the edge? Every second is a ticking clock of relational suspense. Natalie exhales sharply, crosses her arms, and takes a step back. The weight of his words, or lack thereof, is sinking in. Her patience thins visibly. You can feel the tension snapping in the air. And just like that, Natalie storms off, leaving Gino standing alone, confusion and shock written across his face. The test isn't over, it's only just begun, and the stakes have never been higher. Natalie walks a few steps, then stops, her hands gripping the edge of her bag. Her chest tightens, thoughts spinning. How many times has this exact scenario played out? She remembers the last weekend, the lies, the half-truths, the excuses that never added up. It's like déjà vu, except this time the stakes feel higher. She wants him to get it, to finally see the impact of his choices. But Gino is miles away in his own world. Gino watches her retreat, confusion written all over his face, convinced that maybe she's overreacting. He thinks the weekend's fun, escape room, laughs, small victories is enough to smooth things over. He doesn't realize that emotional scars aren't erased by a few moments of play. From a psychological angle, this is classic. He equates external gestures with relational repair while she craves internal accountability. The tension isn't just between them, it's between what's possible and what's probable. Is this relationship salvageable? Can a second chance survive repeated mistakes? The questions linger, heavy in the air. The contrast is obvious. In another part of The Doctor, Sophie and Pedro manage small wins because honesty and communication guide them. With Gino and Natalie, those foundations are shaky at best. Every movement, every glance from Natalie is loaded with emotion. She's hurt, frustrated, and uncertain. Gino's obliviousness only magnifies the stakes, making each second feel longer, each pause feel heavier. The weekend that was supposed to test them now feels like a ticking clock counting down to inevitable confrontation. And as Natalie turns back briefly, searching his eyes for any sign of understanding, the tension spikes. You know what's coming next. There's no escaping it. The final confrontation looms, unavoidable, and the truth they've been dancing around is about to explode. The air between them is sharp, almost electric. Natalie doesn't hold back. Every word is loaded, each pause a judgment. "Do you even realize what you're doing, Gino?" she asks, voice tight. He fumbles, stammers, trying to find the right thing to say, but the right thing left the building a long time ago. His pattern is clear: avoid, deflect, and hope it blows over. Except, hope isn't working this time. Gino's mistakes aren't small, they're cumulative. Every half-truth, every excuse, every moment he ignored her feelings has stacked up like firewood. Now the spark is reality. She's frustrated, she's hurt, and she's questioning whether this second chance was ever real. From a behavioral perspective, it's fascinating. People like Gino confuse charm and distraction with responsibility. He thinks being fun or present in the moment erases past failures, but trust doesn't work that way. Natalie's frustration isn't just anger, it's disappointment, the kind that sits heavy in your chest. She wants clarity, honesty, and respect. The audience sees it too. Watching someone repeat the same mistakes is painful, but also revealing. She isn't overreacting. He's not learning. That contrast fuels the tension, making every glance, every misstep, every defensive shrug a narrative in itself. He tries humor, tries excuses, tries pleading with his eyes. None of it lands. Because behavioral patterns aren't corrected with charm, they're corrected with acknowledgement and change. And Gino hasn't acknowledged, he hasn't changed, which makes every second stretch longer, heavier. And then the moment hits, Natalie steps back, measuring whether she'll forgive again or finally walk. The weekend's test has pushed them to the edge. Will this be the last chance or the final goodbye? The answer is hanging in the balance, and you can feel the clock ticking. Gino makes a move, suddenly aware that the clock is against him. He tries to explain, tries to patch the cracks with words that feel rehearsed but desperate. "I didn't mean to hurt you," he says, voice low, almost pleading, and in that moment you can see him trying to convince himself as much as her. The tension is thick. Natalie listens, her arms crossed, eyes sharp. She's not naive. She knows charm can mask mistakes, but it can't erase them. From the audience's point of view, this is where the real drama unfolds. We're asking ourselves, is he being sincere, or is this another tactic? Behavioral psychology tells us people respond to stakes differently. Some double down on avoidance, some pivot toward honesty when the consequences loom. Gino is caught between instinct and awareness, and it shows. His body language, hesitation, and glances all tell a story louder than his words. Natalie's decision-making is fascinating. She's weighing history against the present, emotion against principle. There's relief in his attempt, yet doubt shadows every syllable. Watching someone navigate that emotional tightrope is gripping because the stakes aren't theoretical, they're real, messy, human. The audience feels it too. Every pause, every careful phrase, every subtle eye roll or nod builds tension higher. And then comes the moment of truth. Natalie exhales, holding her gaze on Gino. The weekend's test has pushed both of them to the edge. Will she forgive him, giving him yet another chance? Or will she step back, finally drawing the line on repeated deception? Everything rides on a single decision, and the answer isn't obvious. It could go either way, and the suspense is unbearable. Her next words are about to define whether this relationship finds redemption or collapses completely, leaving a trail of heartbreak and lessons that neither of them will forget. The room feels heavy after their confrontation. Natalie steps back, still processing the storm of emotions. She's caught between anger, disappointment, and a flicker of hope. Gino, on the other hand, looks almost dazed, like he's only now realizing the full weight of his repeated mistakes. The contrast couldn't be starker. One person fiercely protective of their boundaries, the other scrambling to convince both himself and her that he's changed. Behavioral patterns are hard to break, and this weekend proves it. Gino has been here before, promises made, lessons supposedly learned, but the old tendencies creep back. Avoidance, half-truths, fumbling under pressure. Natalie sees it all. Every hesitation, every awkward pause, every attempt at charm that doesn't land. She knows patterns are as revealing as words. It's one thing to hear apologies, it's another to witness change in action, and right now, action is where Gino falls short. For Natalie, the emotional roller coaster leaves her torn. She wants clarity, stability, and honesty, but the emotional residue of past encounters clouds her judgment. For viewers, it's fascinating watching someone balance love and self-respect, hope and skepticism. Meanwhile, Gino is processing lessons the hard way. He's learning, or at least noticing, the consequences of repeated behavior. The audience can sense his growing awareness, but will awareness translate into real change? Even as they part ways for a moment, tension lingers. The weekend's events have exposed vulnerabilities, tested boundaries, and forced both to confront uncomfortable truths. Nothing is neatly resolved. The open loops from earlier, the lies, the evasions, the emotional standoff aren't fully closed. As they each take a breath, you can feel it. The story isn't over. Whatever happens next will hinge on whether patterns are broken or repeated, and the next move could tip the balance entirely, leaving everyone on edge for what's coming. As the weekend closes, the emotional dust hasn't settled. Natalie walks away with her guard up, weighing every word, every hesitation, every small betrayal. Gino follows, trying to process what went wrong, and in his mind, he keeps replaying the moments he thought were harmless. This contrast between perception and reality is the core of their tension. One sees deception even in silence, the other assumes fun and words are enough to bridge the gap. Psychologically, it's a classic collision of patterns and expectations. Natalie has a threshold for honesty that Gino struggles to meet. Every evasion, every half-truth chips away at trust, while Gino's impulsive optimism makes him blind to the stakes. For viewers, it's a lesson in emotional accountability. Intentions alone don't repair damage, and repeated mistakes demand scrutiny before forgiveness. It's fascinating to watch someone wrestle with love, self-respect, and the desire to believe someone can change. Even as the weekend ends, the story leaves cracks and questions. Natalie may forgive him again, but will it last? Gino may think he understands now, but will he act differently next time? Their unresolved tension lingers like a spark, setting the stage for the next confrontation. Comparisons with other couples only deepen the intrigue. Seeing what works and what fails adds layers to the drama without judgment, letting the audience draw their own conclusions. The takeaway is clear: relationships are as much about patterns as they are about moments. What you see now may be a reflection of what's yet to come. And in the case of Gino and Natalie, one weekend has peeled back layers, exposed vulnerabilities, and tested limits, leaving both parties and viewers on the edge. If you thought this weekend was intense, buckle up. The next chapter promises even more secrets, confrontations, and decisions that could change everything for Gino, Natalie, and everyone watching.